good afternoon from Geneva, and a warm welcome to all our members around the world who are joining us for this virtual meeting on the occasion of International Day of Parliamentarism and the official close of the IPU's 130th anniversary as we mark the day of our foundation back in 1889. My name is Thomas Fitzsimons. I'm the Director of Communications for the IPU, and I'm delighted to be your moderator for this session today. So we have a great program. We have a rich program for you. And in part one, we will start with the official proceedings of the Quintet. So this is the group of 5, which includes the most recent and the future presidents of IPU assemblies from Qatar, Serbia, and Rwanda, together with the IPU president and the IPU secretary general. And they will discuss the outcomes and the resolutions from previous assemblies and also their vision for future assemblies, whether they're physical, hybrid, or virtual. In part 2, we will then open the discussion to include the heads of the geopolitical groups and some representatives of the wider IPU membership to discuss how their parliaments have responded to the COVID-19 pandemic. What examples of good practice can they share? What are the challenges facing parliaments going forward? And on International Day of Parliamentarism, what can parliaments and parliamentarians do in the face of the unprecedented pandemic? And last but not least, in part 3, we're excited to launch the IPU 130th anniversary book, which has been several months in the making. And we have just published the English version on the IPU website, which you can already download whilst you're waiting for the hard copies to arrive by post, which we'll be sending out to all our members over the next few weeks. And there will be a French version, which we're finalizing at the moment, and that will be ready soon. So without further ado, I will now hand over to Madam President to open the Quintet meeting. Madam President, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Thomas, and thank you very much for your enthusiastic participation and involvement in this 130th year-long anniversary. Today, IPU is about to have its 131st anniversary. So thank you very much. It has been, I think, a fantastic year, and most especially because we are remembering our duty with multilateralism, our duty as parliamentarians. Welcome, dear colleagues, to this meeting on the 3rd edition of the International Day of Parliamentarism and on the anniversary of the foundation of the IPU in 1889. This is also the opportunity for us to celebrate the close of the IPU's 130th anniversary year as we mark 131 years of existence of our beloved organization. The IPU was created on the very premise that we are stronger together. A handful of parliamentarians came together in Paris in 30 June 1889, led by our founders, William Randall Kramer and Frederick Passy, respectively from Great Britain and from France, to find common solutions to the pressing issues of that day. 131 years later, the COVID-19 pandemic powerfully illustrates that the biggest global problems cry out for international cooperation. Governments and parliaments need to work together to find vaccines, to support vulnerable people and countries, and to build back better our economies. Now, more than ever, parliaments and parliamentary leaders must step up, take bold action, find and implement common solutions. Our founders were indeed visionaries when they realized that the only way to solve global issues was through dialogue, diplomacy, and exchanging knowledge. As we also celebrate the 75th anniversary of the signing of the United Nations Charter, we should remember that the IPU is the donjon of the political multilateralism, standing the test of time, outliving the League of Nations, and seeing the birth of the United Nations. We should also remember how the United Nations Charter starts. We, the people of the United Nations. And we have to be very proud of being representatives of the people. That's how parliaments were born, representing the people and taking decisions on their behalf. The IPU is a resilient and dynamic organization, and we can be proud of our achievements as a global parliamentary community over the past 13 decades. Indeed, we have helped to shape the institutions of multilateralism. We have promoted and engaged in political dialogue to build better understanding among nations. We have driven the political empowerment of women and youth participation in public life. And we have developed a parliamentary dimension to global governance. We can also be proud of our growth. From a small group of MPs from 9 countries in 1889 to 179 member parliaments and 13 associate members and parliamentary associations today. To go back to the original idea of the quintet, I would like to thank 2 particular speakers, Ms. Maja Gokovic, represented today by Mr. Grujic. I would like to send all my solidarity to my dearest friend Maja, and Mr. Al Mahmoud, speaker from the Shura Council in Qatar, a dearest friend who also hosted us in Doha, for their exceptionally hard work hosting the past 2 IPU assemblies respectively, as I mentioned, Doha in April and Belgrade in October of last year. They are not here, but I would also like to recognize our Russian friends. This quintet meeting started precisely trying to put all the knowledge, all ideas, all our commitments from the last assemblies. We started a year ago. I would like to thank Ms. Valentina Matvienko, to Konstantin Kusechev, because they started being a very important part of these quintet meetings. And of course, we are looking forward to be soon in Rwanda. And hopefully we will have Morocco also included in this very important table. Both assemblies, in those cases, the last ones, Doha and Belgrade, will be remembered in the history books, and some of the most successful and well-attended pre-COVID-19 IPU assemblies, which mobilized thousands of parliamentarians from all around the world. Both assemblies also led to important outcomes and substantial resolutions. The Doha Declaration, which underlined the critical role of education to enhance peace, security, and the rule of law, as well as support democracy and human rights. And in Belgrade, important discussions of the role of parliamentarians and the contribution of regional cooperation in strengthening international law, as well as the first parliamentary resolution on universal health coverage, a timely resolution as the COVID-19 pandemic hit the world a few weeks later. We look forward to hearing more about those assemblies and their outcomes when we hear shortly from Mr. Al Mahmoud and Mr. Grujic. I would like to thank also Ms. Donatil Mukabalisa, Speaker of the Chamber of Deputies in Rwanda, for her future leadership in hosting an IPU assembly in Kigali in 2021. Despite the difficult circumstances, I am convinced that the Kigali Assembly will be highly successful as we learn to reinvent ourselves and live in a different world. Before closing my welcoming remarks, I would like to express, I think, one concern. Today, we are starting to see kind of the end in some parts of the world of this terrible pandemic. But we are just seeing the beginning of an economic challenge. And of course, the previous challenges are still there, like climate change, like inequality, like all the problems implementing SDGs, for example. This is the moment where we need to understand our parliamentary responsibility, that it goes not only in a very individual or personal responsibility, but also in terms of the parliament institution and of course also of the Inter-Parliamentary Union. Today is going to be the moment to defend democracy, to defend human rights, to be sure that fear is not going to be used to restrict freedoms of human rights. Today is the moment where we need to renew our commitment with the parliamentary dialogue that our founding fathers started. Parliamentary dialogue was the foundation of the IPU. And it was not only for having meetings or these beautiful and useful assemblies. Parliamentary dialogue as a very powerful instrument for peace, for understanding, for cooperation, for solidarity, for agreements. And that's the true nature of the IPU, parliamentary dialogue. Today, where multilateralism is being threatened, parliamentarism, this International Day of Parliamentarism, this 30 June, is a very powerful signal that parliamentary dialogue and understanding can also be a key tool for strengthening multilateralism. A few days ago, the United Nations Secretary General was mentioning how difficult it has been to solve the COVID-19 pandemic because some countries are not willing to cooperate with each other. This is the moment where nature, where the planet is challenging us to build back better. We need to figure out how are we going to build sustainable and inclusive economies. How are we going to protect jobs and salaries? How are we going to protect women, youth, and children? So IPU today is very much needed. We need more IPU. We need more parliamentarism. We need more dialogue. We need more understanding. That is going to be the foundation for a more peaceful, inclusive, and sustainable planet. I would like to thank you all for being here with us. Thank you, dear friends and colleagues, for joining in this virtual Quintet meeting to take stock of our results in follow-up to the IPU assemblies, to identify gaps and solutions, and for helping to guide the work of our beloved organization, especially in the time of pandemic and its aftermath. As parliamentarians, we number to close 46,000 worldwide. We are the generation that can either stop climate change or condemn the planet to self-destruction. We are the generation that can achieve gender equality or the one that perpetuates patterns of violence against women. We are the generation that can open the world to young people or deliver a fatal blow to their confidence. We are the generation that can change history. Thank you very much again for being here. Welcome to this meeting of the Quintet of the IPU. Happy day of International Day of Parliamentarism. Happy anniversary of our beloved IPU. Thank you very much again, Thomas, for organizing this meeting.
Thank you, Madam President. So we now have a short video message from the United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres.
The International Day of Parliamentarism is a timely occasion to honor the pivotal role of parliaments in giving people a voice and influence to shape policy. As a former parliamentarian, I am deeply conscious of the responsibility and privilege of representing people and delivering on their aspirations. Parliaments have a special duty to advance human rights and promote sustainable development. More than ever, the COVID-19 pandemic reminds us of these vital tasks. As the world responds to the pandemic, we see the critical importance of adequate health systems, robust social safety networks, and equitable economic growth that generates decent jobs. We also see the most vulnerable in our societies, especially women, bearing the greatest burden. Inequalities, stigmas, divisions, and the fragilities of our world have multiplied before our eyes. We must act together to rebuild a more equal, resilient, and greener future for all. I urge national parliaments everywhere to play their full part in advancing sustainable, inclusive responses. This should include, in collaboration with civil society, national action plans against racial discrimination. At the same time, let's remember that no nation can succeed on its own. Let's seize every opportunity to reshape and secure our common future, take ambitious climate action, and place human rights and human dignity at the core of our work. Thank you.
So now we will pass the floor to Mr. Al Mahmoud, the Speaker of the Shura Council of Qatar and President of the 140th IPU Assembly in Doha. You have the floor, Mr. Speaker.
سعادة السيد غابرييلا كيوفاس بارون رئيسة الاتحاد البرلماني الدولي، سعادة السيد مالدين بروجيك ممثل السيدة ماياكا كوجوكوفيتش رئيسة الاتحاد الوطني، رئيسة الجمعية الوطنية لجمهورية صربيا، أصحاب السعادة رؤساء المجموعات البرلمانية الجيوسياسية، سعادة سيد مارتن شون كونغ الأمين العام للاتحاد البرلماني الدولي، سعادة سيدة من قبل سعادة السيد دوناتيلا موكا باليزا رئيسة مجلس النواب في جمهورية رواندا. يسرني ببدء أن أعبر لكم عن سعادتي بالاجتماع معكم ولو افتراضيا. كان بودي أن ألتقي معكم وأحيي كل واحد منكم ونلتقي معا، ولكن كما تعلمون بسبب الظروف الصعبة التي تمر بها الإنسانية جمعاء من جراء الانعكاسات السلبية لجائحة كورونا التي أثرت على جميع مناحي الحياة وحالت دون الالتقاء معكم أيها الأخوة الأصدقاء ومع الأخوة الأصدقاء الآخرين الذين نقدرهم، ونحرص على التنسيق معهم في كل الأمور والقضايا المتعلقة بأنشطة الاتحاد البرلماني الدولي وبالسلم والتعاون الدوليين. إنها مناسبة سعيدة أن نلتقي اليوم يوم 30/6/2020 اليوم العالمي للنظام البرلماني الذي نخلد فيه ذكرى تأسيس الاتحاد. لقد كانت السنة الماضية متميزة في تاريخ الاتحاد البرلماني الدولي، إذ خلدنا فيها خلال عام كامل ذكرى ميلاد الاتحاد، حيث تم تنظيم العديد من المناسبات والحفلات في مختلف أنحاء العالم عبر فيها البرلمانيون والسياسيون عن تمسكهم بالنظام البرلماني ودعمهم للمنظمة التي تجمعهم وتوحدهم، وهي الاتحاد البرلماني الدولي. وأتذكر بهذه المناسبة الاحتفال الكبير الذي نظمه مجلس الشورى هنا في دولة قطر بالمتحف الوطني لقطر يوم 12/12/2019 من العام الماضي، والذي حضرته سعادة السيدة رئيسة الاتحاد البرلماني الدولي وسعادة السيد أمينه العام، وكذلك جميع أصحاب السعادة أعضاء مجالس الشورى وعدد كبير من البرلمانيين يمثلون مجالس أكثر من 60 دولة. لقد سعدنا بهم وبهذه المناسبة معهم. لا بد لي من التنويه بالعمل الكبير التي تقوم به السيدة غابريلا كوفاس بارون رئيسة الاتحاد البرلماني الدولي وسعادة السيد الأمين العام، بالرغم من الظروف الصعبة التي تمر منها الإنسانية من جراء هذا الوباء الذي نرجو الله أن يرفعه عنا جميعا في القريب العاجل. لقد عقد الاتحاد البرلماني الدولي عدة اجتماعات افتراضية عن طريق الاتصال المرئي، وهو الآن بصدد الاستعداد لاجتماعات أخرى سيكون من شأنها تعزيز أواصر الصداقة والتعاون بين جميع الأعضاء وتقوية مبادراتهم من أجل الاستقرار والأمن والسلام في العالم. أتمنى باجتماع لجنتنا الخماسية هذه النجاح والتوفيق في أعمالها والخروج بنتائج يكون من شأنها دعم العمل البرلماني وتعزيز التعاون الدولي لمكافحة الفقر والحرمان وتحقيق التنمية المستدامة لجميع شعوب العالم. تحية لكم من دولة قطر أميرا وشعبا، ونتمنى لكم التوفيق، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Many thanks indeed, Mr. Al Mahmoud, for those words. And I would now ask Serbia, Mr. Mladen Grucic, who is member of the IPU Executive Committee and who is representing the Speaker of the National Assembly of the Republic of Serbia, Ms. Maja Gojkovic, who I believe is otherwise detained with the elections happening at the moment in Serbia, and who was the president of the 141st IPU Assembly in Belgrade in October of last year. Mr. Grucic, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. honorable representatives of the Inter-Parliamentary Union Quintet, dear executive committee members, dear heads of geopolitical groups, dear colleagues. I would like to convey the greetings of Madam Speaker of the National Assembly of the Republic of Serbia, Maja Gojković, and her regrets because she was not able to greet you herself. Maja is in a hospital with COVID-19. She's stable, and I can guarantee you that she is as strong as usual. We expect her back in a couple of days. It is a great pleasure for me to participate in the work of Inter-Parliamentary Union Quintet on the International Day of Parliamentarism, established by the United Nations for the very purpose of emphasizing the importance of national parliaments and the IPU. I'm particularly pleased with the fact that representatives of all geopolitical groups, as well as executive committee members, are with us today. Unfortunately, ever since we last met at the 141st IPU Assembly in Belgrade, the world has changed dramatically. At that time, we could not guess that today we would be facing one of the most serious pandemics in history, but also the crisis that is brought to health systems and economies around the world. However, we see now how visionary was to adopt the resolution at the Belgrade Assembly, achieving universal health coverage by 2030, the role of parliaments in ensuring the right to health. It couldn't be a better topic. This resolution emphasized the importance of building a reliable system of primary healthcare and strengthening health systems, emphasizing the role that such systems play in ensuring global health security. The pandemic of COVID-19 virus has unfortunately testified to the justification of our call to accelerate the process of progress towards achieving universal health care, especially for the large population in the world who lack access to primary health care. We're aware of how crucial it is to make certain, as parliamentarians, that all people and communities have access to as many health services as they need, and that these services are of sufficient quality and efficiency, and no less important, financially affordable. However, despite the fact that it's a priority for national health systems and budgets, the achievement of universal health coverage also requires international solidarity and cooperation. We are not doctors in IPU, or at least most of us are not, but we can provide legislation that can make change in this international battle against disease. The challenges we face during the pandemic are neither with the national borders, nor are responses possible within national borders. That is why this is the time for solidarity. Parliamentary solidarity is another important response to the challenges of the present moment. Only through joint action can we counter threats to all of humanity, such as pandemic. The coronavirus is the common enemy of all people around the world, regardless of ethnicity, nationality, political affiliation, or religion. This fight requires global unity, solidarity, and cooperation. And I am pleased to note that the commitment to multilateralism and interparliamentary cooperation has not been lacking, even in these challenging times. Dear colleagues, I am pleased to note that the 141st Assembly in Belgrade, one of the largest in the history of Inter-Parliamentary Union so far, was also an opportunity to promote the work of IPU during the previous 130 years. With this session of the IPU, we wanted to return to the roots of our common organization, which was created in the desire for dialogue to overcome misunderstandings and conflicts. We have managed to strengthen our faith in mutual cooperation and mutual trust, in order to preserve the global peace and stability that we all need. That is why we must strengthen cooperation within our organization, because for decades it has been proving to be a good and firm support to the parliaments of the whole world in facing the volatile challenges, including today's challenges we face. Let me take this opportunity to thank you for valuable contribution to the Belgrade Declaration on strengthening international law, parliamentary roles and mechanisms, and the contribution of regional cooperation, which emphasize the importance and role of parliaments and parliamentarians in respecting and promoting international law. Finally, let me thank the parliaments of Russian Federation and Qatar, as well as President and Secretary General of IPU, for the full support in the preparation of the Assembly in Belgrade, and to emphasize our complete readiness to share our experiences with the future hosts. The National Assembly of the Republic of Serbia will continue to provide a full contribution to the work of the IPU, as it has done in the last almost 130 years, especially bearing in mind that 2021 marks the 130th anniversary of our country's membership in the IPU. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope to see you soon in a real life. Thank you very much.
Many thanks indeed, Mr. Grucic, and please send our warm wishes to Mrs. Gojkovic and wishes for a speedy recovery. We would now like to pass the floor to Rwanda, Madame Mukabaliza, the Speaker of the Chamber of Deputies of Rwanda and a future president of an IPU assembly in 2021. Madam Speaker, you have the floor.
Honorable Gabriela Cuevas Baron, President of IPU, Honorable Speakers, Mr. Malte Shungong, Secretary General of IPU, Honorable Members of Parliament, Heads of the geopolitical groups, on behalf of the Parliament of Rwanda and on my own behalf, I would like first of all to wish all a happy International Day of Parliamentarism, and I have take this opportunity to express my sincere thanks to the IPU for the invitation addressed to me to be part of this virtual meeting for International Day of Parliamentarism celebration, as well as the celebration of IPU's 131st anniversary. The celebration of the International Day of Parliamentarism and the celebration of our organization's anniversary reminds all of us, as representatives of the people, our vital legislative and oversight roles to find solutions to the challenges citizens are facing. The two events happen when the entire world is currently plunged into difficult situation due to COVID-19 pandemic. This pandemic has a serious negative impact on all spheres of life, and the fight against it requires everyone's collaboration. I take this opportunity to thank the IPU for having reinforced parliamentary diplomacy and called its members for solidarity and cooperation to urgently and effectively respond to COVID-19 and address its consequences. I thank my counterpart, Right Honorable Speakers of Qatar and Serbia, who presented the outcomes of the previous assemblies in Doha and Belgrade. As the next host, we have been inspired by the way those IPU assemblies were organized. The discussions we had and the resolutions adopted, including the achievement of universal health coverage by 2030 as a key element for sustainable development goals and climate change, as well as our commitment to enhance education for peace, security and rule of law, and promotion of trade and investment in achieving sustainable development goals contributed for sure to the actions that benefit to our respective people. Honorable President of the IPU, Honorable Speaker, Mr. Secretary General of the IPU, Honorable Members of Parliament, as far as the organization of the 142nd IPU Assembly and related meetings that were scheduled to take place in Rwanda in October 2020 is concerned, preparatory meetings at our level started immediately after signing the agreement in October last year in Belgrade, and we regularly exchange the views with IPU General Secretariat to evaluate together the progress of preparations. However, since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, many events have been cancelled all over the world. After assessing the impact of the pandemic throughout the entire world and complex challenges, we requested IPU to postpone the IPU Assembly, and we are still committed to host it in October 2021. And we hope that IPU governing bodies will once again accept to offer the offer of our Parliament to host that assembly next year. The proposed theme for general debate for Kigali IPU Assembly in 2021 is gender equality and empowerment of women and girls, an urgent need to accelerate action and implement our commitments. We would like to thank the Governing Council for having accepted that theme and acknowledge the important role that IPU played and continue to play to promote women's rights and as human rights, and a great emphasis on gender equality in politics. Therefore, it will be an opportune time to reflect on the achievements made over the 26 years of implementation of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, the 21-year review of implementation of United Nations Security Council Resolution 3025 on women, peace and security, and key milestones reached towards the implementation of the SDGs since 2015. To identify persisting gaps and commit to adopt and leverage a mechanism to keep accelerating the momentum in order to build a world where women and men and the next generation are proudly contributing and benefiting from our country's potentials. It will be impossible to build up a democratic and inclusive society based on pluralism without strengthening at the international level gender equality and the presence of participation of women in senior positions and in parliaments in all countries. I strongly believe that the discussion at that assembly will help to increase investment in gender equality and women's and girls' empowerment as essential element for peace and sustainable development, good governance, respect of human rights, and democracy. We hope that participants to the Assembly will showcase achievements, experiences, and lessons learned in promoting gender equality and mainstreaming it in all development frameworks. Rwanda, as the host of the Assembly, will share with other parliamentarians its achievements in advancing gender equality and women's empowerment, and how the recognition and support to women's potential have been one of the drivers of the rapid socioeconomic transformation, in spite of the enormous challenges that our country faced in the aftermath of the 1994 genocide against Tutsi. Honorable President of the IPU, Honorable Speaker, Mr. Secretary General of IPU, honorable members of Parliament, we will be delighted to welcome you in our country, Rwanda, next year. We and our fellow Rwandans will do our best to make your stay as productive and enjoyable as possible. I thank you for your kind attention. May God bless you all.
Many thanks indeed, Madam Speaker. We're very much looking forward to coming to Kigali in Rwanda next year. Let me now pass the floor to the Secretary General, Mr. Martin Chungong. Martin, over to you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Ladies and gentlemen, let me join previous speakers, especially the IPU President, in welcome you to this meeting of our Quintet. This meeting is taking place on the third International Day of Parliamentarism, as has just been said, and it also is marking the foundation 131 years ago of the Inter-Parliamentary Union. As I speak, I envision that meeting in Paris on the 30th of June, 1889, when just a handful of parliamentarians from 9 countries came together to found the organization. Today, 13 decades later, we are 179 member parliaments strong, together with 13 associate members. In a way, we can truly claim that the IPU has become a global or the global organization of national parliaments. I must say that in spite of our successes and our accolades, our growth, the IPU has continued to maintain its head firmly on its shoulders. We have not lost sight of the founding principles of our ancestors, the importance of strong representative parliaments, and of parliamentary diplomacy and dialogue to help build bridges between nations. This quintet today is a modern expression of those principles as we reach out to each other, albeit in a virtual format, to reaffirm our dedication to the original values articulated by our founders. The meeting offers us a golden opportunity to take stock of what has happened over this past extraordinary 12 to 18 months, in which we have held, as we've all heard, 2 highly successful assemblies, but also had to cancel the one due to take place in Rwanda. But as they say, it's just a postponement because we're looking forward to going to Rwanda next year. We have also had to contend with a pandemic of global proportions. And so as we draw our 130th anniversary year to a close, we can take stock and say that it has been a momentous year with active participation from dozens of our member parliaments who have celebrated their organization in various manners. This time last year, British parliamentarians joined their French counterparts in a recreation of the original 1889 founding meeting of the IPU in Paris. The Hungarian parliament, one of the founding fathers of the organization, organized one of the first events of the anniversary by issuing a special 130th anniversary commemoration stamp, as did the Russian Federation. It is difficult, and I even say perilous, to try to mention every parliament that has organized in one way or the other an event or a special project to celebrate parliamentarism and our anniversary. However, you will allow me to pay special thanks to the parliaments of Bahrain, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Cyprus, Djibouti, India, Paraguay, Qatar, and Uzbekistan for making significant efforts to mark our birthday with themes that we hold dear: promoting gender equality, empowering youth, and strengthening parliamentary dialogue. Reference has been made by previous speakers to the landmark resolution that was adopted in Belgrade in October last year on universal health coverage. And you allow me to spend a few moments on this resolution to explain how the IPU is and can continue to be relevant to the global community. We have all agreed that access to health is a fundamental right. In fact, the most important of all rights, the right to good health and to life. And that is why, as I've just said, we consider the Belgrade Resolution on Universal Health Coverage as a landmark. Over the years, the IPU had worked with parliaments to mobilize them in support of promoting strong access to health for all by the year 2030. We tried to make that right to health a reality. And as I speak, I remember very vividly the conversation that I had in this very premises at IPU headquarters with Dr. Tedros, the newly elected Director General of WHO at the time, and we're discussing the cooperation between the IPU and the World Health Organization. I asked him simply what he expected of the IPU in support of WHO, and he said the IPU should help mobilize parliaments to enshrine in legislation the right to universal health coverage. And barely a year and a half later, all 179 member parliaments of the IPU adopted that resolution in Belgrade, which provides a roadmap for parliaments to work strenuously in enshrining in legislation this right, this basic right, looking at the budgetary allocations to make sure that everyone enjoys the right without being driven into poverty. So this is an example of how the IPU can and continues to be relevant to the global community, including its membership. I just wanted to bring this point to the table because many people, when they see resolutions, they just think it's a piece of paper, but this one is one that addresses a real need, and the IPU was thus stepping up to the plate. And when we look at the pandemic today, that resolution is all the more important, is all the more relevant, given the changing environment. Our societies are changing, our economies are changing as a result of the pandemic, and yet we do know that the worst is yet to come. And so this challenges the IPU to continue to mobilize parliaments to be at the forefront of efforts to not only fight the pandemic today, but to help build resilient, more resilient societies in order to cope with pandemics of a similar proportion in the future. Parliaments and the IPU will therefore need to address the challenges that will be coming, how they can address the crisis in the area of trade, globalization, economic production, and so on and so forth. We think that parliaments and the IPU should be helpful in helping countries restructure their economies to recover from the crisis. I remain convinced that the parliaments and parliamentary democracies do a better job of answering those questions that have been brought to the fore by the pandemic than any other system. I thank all of you for showing parliamentary leadership in addressing the challenges of our time. And as we have said before, it is now more than ever that the world needs parliaments. I use the opportunity to wish every one of you happy International Parliamentarians Day. Happy anniversary for the IPU. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Mr. Secretary General, for those closing words. I think we can now, Madam President, if you agree, we can now move to part 2 of our virtual meeting this afternoon, in which we will open the discussion to the some of the heads of the geopolitical groups that we have with us, and also some representatives from the IPU Executive Committee. So this segment is to look at how parliaments have responded more specifically to the COVID-19 pandemic. You might have seen our campaign, Parliaments in a Time of Pandemic, where we managed to collate a lot of different practice going on in different parliaments around the world of how they're responding to the pandemic from a health point of view, from a legislation point of view, from a human rights point of view, from a gender point of view. So there's some interesting practice out there, and this is perhaps a good opportunity to exchange on that good practice on International Day of Parliamentarism. And then more generally, we can open out the discussion to what are the challenges facing parliaments going forward, and what can parliaments and parliamentarians do in the face of this unprecedented pandemic. Mr. Fulata, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. May I use this opportunity, Madam President, Secretary General, and the moderator, to congratulate you and the entire member nations on the occasion of this milestone in the history of the IPU. I wish to congratulate all of us for this milestone. We in the African continent, and indeed Nigeria, took really preemptive measures immediately. The World Bank, the World Health Organization declared that coronavirus is a pandemic. We took preemptive measures these preemptive measures throughout the African continent may have contributed to the low death rates and infections throughout the continent, even though Africa may have experienced more death arising from the activities of terrorists, activities of mercenaries, and infectious diseases like malaria. Still, the figures compared to other continents is a bit low, essentially due to the actions of various parliaments to take action against the spread of the coronavirus. Yes, I wish IPU as an organization would dedicate a special time or session in the next several meetings, either in Geneva or in the meeting that will take place in Rwanda, to dedicate a special session to address the various challenges facing the African continent, especially in the areas of security, economic challenges, and health challenges. We need that, Madam President. Thank you very much.
We'd like to thank the IPU for inviting us to this meeting in these times of uncertainty and fear caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Our role as parliamentarians who serve as the voice and protector of our people is much more felt and needed. I join all your efforts to promote global cooperation to end this global pandemic. The question is asked on how has our parliament responded to the pandemic. Despite the community quarantine imposed by our government last March, Congress enacted a comprehensive law on the 23rd of March, 2020, which appropriated the necessary funds to provide immediate relief and aid to our most vulnerable families, as well as we authorized the temporary emergency powers of the Executive Department to mitigate the transmission and the spread of this disease. Recently, the Senate also passed a supplemental law to this effect. Now, we continue to conduct committee hearings to monitor the status of the implementation by the executive agencies, and our senators in their private capacities also extend their own respective relief and assistance to the medical and other government frontliners, as well as to the disadvantaged communities most affected by the quarantines or the lockdown. Thank you, Madam President.
Madam President, dear colleagues, I'm very happy to see you all, and I'm very happy to greet you all on this very wonderful occasion as the third edition of our International Day of Parliamentarism. I can't help mentioning that we are specifically proud group that the initiative of establishing this holiday was launched in my country, in Russia, in St. Petersburg in 2017. And after approval by the General Assembly of the United Nations, has become a very good tradition. And its roots come from our geopolitical group, Eurasia. And moreover, without false modesty, I would like to remind you that the format of today's meeting to unite the presidents of most recent and upcoming assemblies. Some people believe we are a small group, but we are able to deliver big ideas, and we are proud of that. As you all know, there is an excellent page on the IPU website where parliaments can send information about their events on occasion of June the 30th. We in Russia have already adopted a special statement of the Federation Council dedicated to the Parliamentarism Day, and specifically today, in the morning, a round table discussion with our colleagues within the framework of which we have discussed the possibilities and mechanisms of parliamentary diplomacy, tasks in the sphere of bilateral interparliamentary cooperation, including the cooperation of the groups of friendship of our chamber. Although this year we had to switch to this new online format of communications and events, I think everyone here will agree with me that it's great to know that the joint cooperation continues in all directions, and we do not lose connections to each other. Today, we have an opportunity to share our experiences and partially assess the effectiveness of our actions as parliamentarians in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite the self-isolation regime introduced in many countries, parliaments have not stopped working for a single day. And this is what I'm proud to mention about our Russian national parliament. For example, in the upper chamber in the Federation Council, during almost 2 months' quarantine, we had 5 regular plenary sessions. We had a video presentation of the joint Russian-French report, Russia-France for the agenda based on trust, with the participation of the 2 speakers of the members of the 2 national parliaments. 29 laws for counteraction to COVID-19 were accepted during this time. And of course, all this was organized with maximum exclusion of risks for deputies and senators. Our parliament had a goal to do everything as quickly as possible in order to implement support measures announced firstly by the president and then by the government of Russia, so that they will be legally insured and so that people would be able to get help as soon as possible. These measures taken primarily concern the support of citizens and the most affected sectors of the economy. In particular, families with children received targeted payments, medical support was provided, many decisions were made to support the tourism industry, small and medium-sized enterprises, as well as the service sector. We are constantly monitoring data on experience of each Russian region fighting against COVID-19 for the analysis of the best practices. We also plan a general document and present it at the Inter-Parliamentary Assembly of Commonwealth of Independent States meeting in the fall, late November. In addition, we have requested similar information from our colleagues from Eurasia Group national parliaments, and in case of any interest from the IPU, we will be happy to share the results obtained. I do hope that during the 142nd IPU Assembly, regardless of its format, we will finally be able to talk about the COVID-19 pandemic in the past tense and discuss the measures undertaken by the parliaments and the best practices of the countries, which turned out to be most vulnerable to the threat of spreading. And by saying that, I wish us all to be able to meet physically, not virtually, already now in October, wherever. And my last point, I probably would not have been a Russian if I not proposed some new ideas. This time, my idea is as follows. Now we have this excellent online discussion, but as far as I understand, it's not broadcasted live anyhow. And I believe it could be a good idea to check the technical modalities and opportunities in order to firstly, at least lay out the video recording of our discussion at our website as soon as possible. But probably next time when we meet, in 1 year time, probably arrange it as a live broadcast on our IPU website so that all our colleagues all over the world would have an opportunity to follow this type of discussions with our specific participation or with the participation of our followers. Thank you so much for your attention, and I wish you all good health and good luck.
Madam President, how are you? Dear colleagues, Mr. Secretary General, it's a pleasure to see you all. For a long time, we don't meet personally, but it's nice to see that everyone is well here in this group. So, to talk a little bit about the crisis and how the geopolitical group and the countries that are member of the 12 plus act with this crisis, and what may we say this is still a problem. First of all, everyone learned something about it. First, the countries, because we need to change. We close our borders, our movements, not just by airplanes, but inside countries were forbidden in many countries, from north to the south, from east to west. Everyone needs to rest at home, for instance. The economy were closed for a long time, 2 months. And so we have a pandemic crisis, but also an economical and a social crisis. We will have the worst economical crisis in this millennium. Maybe 1999, we may compare with that. So the unemployment is rising and the poverty is rising. And so something happened that we are not waiting for. Also, the people change behaviors. It's something that's very quickly. People understand that is an enemy that we don't see and may attack all of us. So people stay at home. We don't need a law to do it. In Portugal, for instance, before we approve the law, people stay at home because people are afraid what can happen. Everyone now uses the masks, not just because it's an obligation, because also people wish to defend ourselves and our families. And shake hands or give a kiss, that is a normal way to behave, change at all. So people learn also. And Parliament, of course, we need to adapt to this new reality. And not just in Portugal, but we saw that in all countries at 12 plus in Europe, but also in Australia or in Canada, we change the plenary sessions, especially one per week is usually, not with all members of Parliament present. For instance, here in Portugal, with just 20% of members are present. We know that other countries, just the heads of political parties are present during the plenary sessions, because we need to approve the bills that are essential to have support to our economies, to our families, and in this emergency situation. So we keep the Parliament working, but not as usual, of course. Then committees still working, but I think that the great majority in all countries work by video conference. So people may stay at home, but the politicians keep working the fiscalization of government still, because it's one of our important tasks. And also, we understood that we need to change something about the laws of our Parliament. For instance, the vote. To vote in our law said this needs to be present during the session. We accept now that people can vote remotely from in a video conference, or our colleagues from Madeira or from Azores. They are not allowed to fly to come to the Parliament, but they are members of the Parliament, and they need to vote in all decisions, and they vote by video. So we need to learn also our work on this in this situation. But something we don't know exactly how to do is to keep the contact with the people, because the parliamentarians are not just parliamentarians to be at in a big palace, in sessions or in committees or in plenary sessions. Parliamentarians need to have contact with the people in their own districts, but in all continents. And so, okay, we may arrange video conferences, but this is not the same. And we need to find ways to have to keep the contact with the people. When we know that, for instance, old people or people that have not social way to have computers, and they don't have the knowledge to receive the message by the new technologies. And so, what is the traditional way to do politics? We need to change, and we need to learn how to do it, because it's impossible, for instance, to have next November a presidential election as it is usual, with big parties, with big dinners, with the president going town to town, shaking hands and kissing people and saying, how are you, and so on. It's impossible to do it, because it needs to keep safe. And also we say always that it's impossible to have big manifestations of people. And this is the thing that I think is not, we didn't find a solution for that until now. Finally, I just need to say one thing, that I know that it happened in some countries, in my country, but it was not in other countries. A big national consensus about it. Here in Portugal, the emergency situation was approved in our parliament with 90%, 95, may I say, 95% of MPs voting in favor. And so the president, the prime ministers, the leaders of all political parties, every week with health authorities to have the same information and to find the solutions for it. So we give up of a political fight between us. This is a way and a situation that we need to be together, not fighting. And of course, in the future, the leader of opposition will be in a huge debate with the prime minister. But in this time, they are side by side, because the situation needs that. And I know that this is happened here, it happened in some Scandinavian countries, for instance, but we know also that in other countries, we keep the fight between political leaders. And it didn't give confidence to the people, because when the government presents a solution and a way to fight the problem, we also see the other side. Some politicians said that is the wrong way to fight this problem. And so people, I will trust, I will do it. I don't know if it's the correct way to solve the problem. This is why I think that the consensus in this area is essential. And I am very happy because it happened here in Portugal. Thank you so much. And please keep safe.
Thank you, Madam President. Once again, I would like to congratulate the IPU on the auspicious occasion of the 130th anniversary, as well as the official launch of the 130th anniversary book. The current pandemic is essentially a war faced by the entire world. We all have witnessed the impact of COVID-19 outbreak on both social and economic dimensions. Thailand's action to control this virus has been very successful due to the Thai government firm responses and cooperation of the citizens. Community transmission of the virus has been nearly eliminated in Thailand, with all new cases being detected in new arrival to the country, and has been contained by Thailand's effective, diligent uses of its quarantine policy. The Thai government also taken measures to assist its citizens, especially those with low income and unemployed population affected by the pandemic, get through the crisis. All these problems need to be met with urgent solutions and legislative efforts. Parliamentarians have a key role to address these global challenges and deliver effective support in accordance with the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you very much.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you very much for allowing us to join you today. Madam President, it's good to see you again. We've been meeting more frequently in the last month than we have in the last couple of years, so it's a wonderful thing to see you again. I'm glad we're making so much progress. I also wanted to join my voice to those who have spoken before to congratulate the IPU on this, its 130th anniversary. This is a very auspicious moment for the organization and an important moment as we think about what role we can continue to play and the organization can continue to play going forward. Tomorrow is also Canada's 153rd birthday. It's our anniversary tomorrow, 153 years strong, founded by the coming together of many cultures and disparate forces in 1867. We've been part formally of the IPU since 1912, but we have been attending meetings since 1900. And so we're pleased to be as supportive as we are as a parliament for all the good work that the IPU is undertaking and plans to undertake going forward. The IPU has survived world wars. It has survived other pandemics. It has survived massive dislocations, economic crises, depressions, and it will survive this COVID-19 crisis as well. The world, I'm convinced, needs it to survive. I think that COVID is demonstrating for legislators around the world the extent of our interconnectedness. I think it is bringing it home to us in a visceral way as members of parliament, as legislators, senators. It doesn't really matter what order of government, but we understand that the planet is in fact not getting any bigger. It's getting smaller. And we are connected like never before. And I think COVID is demonstrating that in a way that we perhaps did not contemplate. I also think it's demonstrating, as others have said, that there is a fundamental importance in coming together to overcome shared challenges. And I think that that is one of the foundational roles, a core responsibility inherent in the mandate of the IPU. Nowhere, Madam President and colleagues, is this more evident than in the continuing and underlying challenges of sustainability. I have had the privilege of personally working on sustainable development issues now for almost 40 years. And I am convinced that issues like climate change, species at risk, the health of our oceans, desertification, food security, human rights, these issues transcend COVID-19. They continue, they're foundational, and they will be there for us to deal with when we wrestle the COVID-19 demon to the ground. All of these issues, which are captured so well in our 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which we as a planet, as one species, came together to agonize over finalizing. These 17 Sustainable Development Goals will need cooperation like never before. And it compels us to keep the IPU strong and resilient. We need to keep evolving and changing. We need to up our game technologically. We need to engage with our younger colleagues, with those who have not yet sought political office, but who will, and who will take the torch and the baton from each and every one of us. Canada's response to COVID has been simple. It's been a science and a people-centric response. We have governed ourselves based on data and evidence. And that has not been easy when other forces exert influence, economic forces, social, cultural forces, asking us to not abide by the science and the data and the evidence. But we have held the line and we focused on our people to make sure that our economic system can continue while making sure that our people have the security that they need. I want to end on a very positive note to all colleagues who are here today and all those who may listen in the future. I have never been more convinced, more hopeful about our future. We're going to do this together. We're going to have to break down barriers. We're going to have to foster and cultivate understanding. People often talk about tolerance, as if we should merely tolerate each other. I reject that notion. I would rather speak about celebration. Canadians celebrate each other, our 95 languages, our 175 countries of origin. We feel as if we are the United Nations of Canada. We hope for the future, and I've never been more hopeful that the IPU will play a foundational role in making sure that we tackle these challenges. Congratulations to all. Thank you for all of your good work, all of our team at the IPU. Madam President, thank you for your service over the past term as president. You've been running at high speed. You're like that Energizer bunny on advertising that just keeps going. So thank you for all of your help and my very best wishes to each and every one of you. Thank you so much.
Madam President, Minister, Secretary General, honorable speakers, dear colleagues, on behalf of the Legislators, allow me to say a few words on the occasion of the celebration of the International Day of Parliamentarism and the official close of the IPU 130th anniversary. 130 years is a long time. An institution which is older than century is considered highly regarded and respectable. We would like to commend you for refusal to bring the COVID-19 problem to be an obstacle to this meeting. Like many other countries, we are facing this pandemic crisis, but we can manage to deal with the disease with relatively successful and listed as one of the best management in the world. This is due to collective effort of our people and excellent performance of our public health effort. Amidst this COVID pandemic, we wish you all the best for all and their peoples to endure, to overcome these difficult times. And finally, wish the IPU all the success in your future endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Good to see you. And also good to see my friend, speaker from Qatar, and also friend Kucek. Please send my regards to Maja Gojkovic, my good friend and speaker of Serbia. Hope that she's soon recovered. We are with her. And also good to see my friend Kosachev, Mr. Kosachev, and good to see you because you pass on your baton to me, and I'll carry on and working very hard with my colleagues on the executive committee. I just want to, if I may, borrow the words of Madam President, because I think it's relevant here. Madam President, I quote your words. It is now that the planet most needs the Inter-Parliamentary Union. It is we, the representatives of the people, who must assume our responsibility as one of the three branches of state power. It is we who must learn lessons, recognizing, thanking, and prioritizing the frontline health and safety workers in our lives. It is we, parliamentarians, who must work at the top speed towards a healthy system that can heal everyone. It is we who need to adjust budgets to get out of this emergency and restructure our economies so that they are more inclusive and able to maintain jobs and wages. It is we who have the enormous task of ensuring our citizens' liberties and rights now and once the health emergency is over. The IPU can allow us to work together. So, Madam President, this is your words. I borrow your words because I think it's relevant and very, very meaningful at this juncture when we are facing the pandemic and also the challenges. Because we are celebrating the Union, the IPU. If I may, I add my personal note to the anniversary when we celebrate the birthday of our Union. I still remember my very first IPU assembly was in autumn of 1988. That was in Budapest, Hungary. That was my very first assembly I attended as a staffer working for our National People's Congress. Ever since, I was involved with the Inter-Parliamentary Union. So I have a special feeling and a sentiments towards Inter-Parliamentary Union. I witnessed the development of the IPU. And also, I witnessed the solutions we have taken to many problems and issues. And we work together and face the challenges as we march towards our destinations. So this is my personal experience. 30-some years working for the IPU. Now I'm the parliamentarian. I represent my people here in China. As I always said that at the IPU occasion, we are working at our capacities, either as a member of the executive committee, or the member of our governing council, or the parliamentarians who attend IPU assemblies. At the bottom of our heart, we are representing our people. So our Secretary General said that this is the organization of our parliaments. It is also the organization of people. We are working for our people. We are representing our people. We are working together to seek the common solutions to the common issues and questions and problems we are facing. So I think the IPU, we have treasures. We defend our values, and also we defend our rules and statutes when we work together to seize the opportunity to solve those issues. As I, the very first assembly I attended as staffer, as I recall, we invited the late president of Palestine, Yasser Arafat, to address the assembly. And the assembly gave applause to him when he addressed the assembly. I cite this example is that the IPU come this far. We solve the issues. We also work out the solutions yet to solve the issues. Some issues are still there, are old issues. Some issues are new. Or some issues we don't see the answers. We don't foresee answers, or we don't know the answers. Just like the pandemic, there still remain a lot we do not know yet. That's why we need to work together. That's why we need the international cooperation. That's why we need effective multilateralism to deliver peace and development to our people we are representing, to deliver the tangible results and benefits to the people we are representing through the international cooperation. That's why I think this meeting, this conference, is very important. As our friend Kozachev from Russia said, it's all the more relevant when we look into the future. As our Secretary General puts it, we had past year had two very important assemblies, one in Dhaka, one in Belgrade. We adopted declarations. These are very, very important declarations. We need to work together to deliver it. So, Madam President, I thank you very much. Give us all a chance to attend this meeting, to witness the official launch of the book. This anniversary book contains the member parliaments, their contributions to the IPU, their contributions to the cause of IPU, their contributions to the well-being of the people they're representing. So this is the first observation I would like to share with our colleagues. Secondly, to the point that while fighting the pandemic, we need all the more the international cooperation and solidarity. We need to work together. We need to put more capital on the research, on the vaccines, on the solutions to work out to fight in the pandemic, because we are witnessing, unfortunately, the increase of cases and the loss of life. Loss even one single life is too many. We cannot afford. We don't have the luxury, to lose any time, to lose any opportunities. Those opportunities offered to us once for a lifetime. We need to work together, put our differences together for the benefits of our people. With the painstaking efforts, the Chinese people work very hard to put under control the pandemic. Yeah, we are working very hard on our economy. We just concluded the annual session of National People's Congress. We passed the resolution on the work report by the government and also on the social economic planning on the budget. I just saw an example. This year, we will allocate 2 trillion RMB on the investment, on the infrastructure, on the grassroots people, those enterprises, the small-scale sized private enterprises. We make sure, put the measures in place, make sure all those money go to the grassroots. Special funding and special treasury bonds. But we see our economy bouncing back. We're stronger. So I think out of this pandemic, the world, the people will work together, will become stronger. We're in a better position to fight the future pandemic, to fight the future challenges. And we definitely will come out of this. but we need work together. So long as we put the people in our hearts, we definitely will come out of these difficulties. We'll weather of these bad weathers. We are on the boat, together to the best destinations. As in this world, we have more than 233 countries and regions with more than 2,000 nations. This is a colorful world. So that's why we're building with our people together, governments and people together in this world, for the community, for the shared future, for the mankind. I thank you very much, and I'm ready, to work with our members of executive, our colleagues, and offer our services to the people we are representing, and also to the geopolitical groups we are representing at the Executive Committee. Finally, I'd like to thank Madam President for your work and your dedications to the Union over your term of office as the President of IPU. And also I'd like to thank our Secretary General and with your Secretariat, and working very hard to carry out the decisions taken by the Governing Council. Thank you very much, and also thank you, my colleagues. I'm very good and happy to be working with you. Thank you.
Madam President, would you like to take the floor now?
Thank you. Thank you so much to the speakers. Thank you for hosting the IPU Assemblies. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your commitment. And of course, I would like also to thank the heads of the geopolitical groups. Thank you for bringing the IPU message to all our membership. Thank you for helping us implementing those decisions that are taken by the governing bodies of the IPU. First of all, allow me to express all my gratitude to the United Nations Secretary General, to Mr. Antonio Guterres. He was very kind when he answered our request to send the message to the parliamentarians of the world. As he said, he was a parliamentarian himself. He understands the IPU because he came to the IPU assemblies. So we have to be very much responsible on the people that we are having in our assemblies, because sometimes they become heads of state, they become even United Nations Secretary General. So that's a very important message for the parliamentary community in this third commemoration of the International Day of Parliamentarism. I would like also to send again all my solidarity to Speaker Gorkovich. I was not sure if it was right to say that she was in the hospital, but she sent me a message. She wanted to be here. She wanted to be with us. She wanted to share this very important meeting. I would like to recognize Maya for her leadership in the IPU Assembly in Belgrade. She was always strong, always pushing for results, always pushing for having the Belgrade Declaration, and she achieved very, very important results. And the same happened in our assembly in Doha. In Doha, as Speaker Ahmed Mahmoud was mentioning, the political conditions seemed to be not very easy, but the speaker's charisma, his very passionate advocacy on consensus, on dialogue, on building bridges, made very good results. Thank you very much, Speaker Al-Mahmoud, for showing how parliamentary dialogue improves parliamentarians' results. I would like also to thank all the heads of geopolitical groups for your messages. I will try to answer to some of these questions. First of all, well, I will end my mandate in October 18, just the 3 years of the mandate that you were very generous to give to me. It has been the highest honor of my life. So I cannot assure that the next assemblies are going to include this dedicated session to the African agenda. But I think that's a very good idea, not only for the assembly in Rwanda. The first assembly for 2021 could be also in Africa, in Morocco. So that's a very powerful message from Africa to all the Inter-Parliamentary Union community. And I think it's not only about the African agenda. I think, yes, African agenda is very, very much important. I was highly committed since I was campaigning 3 years ago into achieving results. Africa is very, very clear in terms of having its own goals, a roadmap now, an African trade agreement for all the region. But I think that we should be working at the IPU in a developing countries agenda. Developing countries share, I think, inequality, share a lot of challenges. So IPU should dedicate also a very important segment for developing countries. How can we bring solutions at developing countries' challenges? And as we were saying, and most of you mentioned, we need common solutions to those shared problems and challenges. I would like also to thank Ms. Pickle Cow. I hope that now I am pronouncing her name correctly. I am so sorry, but I'm trying to learn. And also, I would like to thank Thailand for their very committed participation in terms of health, in terms of parliamentary dialogue, of course, the very active participation of Thailand at the preparatory committee and also at the executive committee. Thank you very much. And Mr. McGuinty, I share your concern about tolerance. And I think that, yes, Canada is sending a very powerful message in this regard. I remember one of my first events as IPU president, it was precisely in Canada with the young parliamentarians. And that was part of the message. You dedicated a very important space for refugees, for immigrants. And that goes not only in terms of tolerating, that goes in terms of integrating. And that's how we need to understand this 21st century. Allow me to go very, very fast to this International Day of Parliamentarism, but also to this highly important coincidence that just a couple of days ago, the United Nations celebrated the signature of the UN Charter. And I think that's very important to mention right now, because going back, it's not about only tolerance. Tolerance must be one of the lessons of the 20th century. But the 21st century demands more from us, from parliamentarians, from the representatives of the people. It demands that we learn from the, I think, horrific lessons from the last century. And that includes the victory that humanity had over Nazism. Nazism was not only a message of hate and discrimination. It was the message that divided, that decided to fight within humanity. Today, we are having those movements in terms of Me Too, defending gender, women, girls. We have Black Lives Matters in terms of respecting human rights regardless of the color of our skin. This is a moment where we must stand against hate speech, against discrimination, against any kind of persecution. That's the way to honor what happened 75 years ago. It's not only about not repeating those mistakes. It is about understanding how parliamentarians, as representatives of the people, must be acting every single day in terms of putting people at the center of our decisions, in terms of understanding that we are one single humanity, in terms of understanding that today we need more multilateralism than ever. Thank you, Mr. Chen. Thank you, because I think that we have been understanding more and more over the long meetings that we are having. And thank you very much, because China is bringing the voice of defending multilateralism. And I think that this is a very powerful voice. And I remember very well when at the World Health Assembly, your president, Mr. Xi Jinping, mentioned that the vaccine must be a common good for humanity. I think that's a very powerful message that was also repeated by some European countries, of course, also from my own country, from Mexico. We also believe that we need to come with a comprehensive solution to this pandemic. In 2009, my country started living also a very difficult experience with an epidemic, with the flu, the AH1N1, and it was a huge responsibility trying to find information, to send all the awareness and our lessons to the world. And we understand perfectly the challenges that many of the countries have experienced. And now it's the time also for the developing countries to experience that pandemic. We are very sure that we need a world solution. We need a humanity solution. I think that these are all the answers regarding the comments that we received. I would like to thank you very much for your very kind and generous words. And of course, this is not a goodbye, but perhaps an opportunity to thank you again, to thank for this generosity and the highest honor I have had in all my life. I hope to continue working with my colleagues parliamentarians, because this International Day of Parliamentarism makes a lot of sense. We created it 3 years ago. It started with a Russian proposal. I remember very well. Konstantin is always telling me that they do not need any kind of recognition, but I remember perfectly when the Russian delegation was starting pushing for this very important day, the International Day of Parliamentarism. And in 2018, the Mexican mission at the United Nations took this very brilliant idea from the Russian delegation, then from an IPU proposal, and that became a reality at the UN General Assembly. We, the IPU, started this International Day of Parliamentarism, and that's why it coincides with the IPU anniversary. Thank you very much, dear colleagues, for bringing these very bright and innovative ideas. Thank you very much, because you understand that parliamentary dialogue can be the foundation for peace and stability in the planet, because you know that parliamentary dialogue, that parliamentarism can be a very powerful tool for this multilateralism that is very much needed. Thank you very much.
It's been a long project in the making, but we're very happy with the results, and happy that we've now got this anniversary book. So, Madam President, maybe you can tell us more about the idea behind the book. What was the objective? You were very much behind this project right from the start. Tell us more about the genesis of the project.
Thank you very much, Thomas. That's a very good way to start from the beginning. Well, I think that the IPU is a beautiful platform. IPU is the most important table for parliamentary dialogue. It was created 131 years ago with one single spirit: parliamentary dialogue as a tool for understanding, for creating more democracy, for defending human rights. Parliamentary dialogue as an instrument for peace. And if we take a look, and that's, I think, fascinating, in 1889, only 10% of the world population lived in a democracy. Only 10%. But the numbers that are like kind of internationally recognized by NGOs and other organizations says that by 2015, almost 56% of the population in the planet was living in a democracy. And that's very important, because IPU says for democracy, for everyone. And that means that we cannot forget our mandate. And that's why having a book to renovate our commitment, bringing the past to the present and to project it to the future, makes a lot of sense. The spirit of this book is how, through national contributions, we can remember how IPU helped our national parliaments, how that relationship between national parliaments and the IPU is bringing more democracy and more human rights to the planet. And of course, if we are going to take a look to the past, it is also an opportunity to have more commitments, and more ideas, and more innovation for the future. So that was the spirit of creating this book. This book and its process also reflects the parliamentary process. We had a very important debates. We had also very important contributions. I would like to thank very especially to Speaker Marzouk Calgany, the Speaker of the Kuwaiti National Assembly, because without his help and the National Assembly's help, this book was not going to be possible. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank him, to thank the Parliament, and of course to thank all the national parliaments that made very important contributions to this book. I think this is a first exercise of remembering why we are here. We cannot afford to lose that first objective. Parliamentary dialogue, parliamentary exchanges, parliamentarians working together for common solutions, for peace, for understanding. So that's why we are here. That's why we have a book. And I hope that we can be able to give more information about the book and its content.
Thank you. Yes, and so talking about the contents of the book, so we've got at the beginning we've got some interesting introductions from yourself, of course, but also from the presidents of the forum of the group of women parliamentarians and the president of the forum of young parliamentarians. So that brings in those different voices. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about those introductions, Madam President, from a gender perspective and from a youth perspective.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Regarding which is my responsibility, my own words, first of all, allow me to start with it. I think that we need to remember how IPU was born and how was the planet at that moment. It was not a very easy development. IPU has seen a lot of stuff. 131 years ago, there were no vaccines. There were no antibiotics. There was not the kind of transportation that we are used to see. Communications have changed and evolved dramatically. And of course, we can see also very important changes when we take a look to politics, to our economies, to the multilateral system. 131 years ago or 130 years ago, there was no United Nations. So IPU started being that voice that understood how different ideas, how different languages, how different nationalities could have dialogue and understanding. 130 years ago, there were no feminist movements. 130 years ago, well, the health was a complete different issue. Well, if we take a look, the Spanish flu in 1918, well, between 1918 and 1920, they had about 50 million people dying. So what we are feeling today, this kind of uncertainty, these challenging times that are clearly not easy for any single country, are also a very important moment, I think, where we need to understand our responsibility and the challenges that we have as parliamentarians. I think the added value of this book is precisely the moment where we are publishing it. Not only because our past is not very important, it is because our past is a very important tool to understand our present responsibility and the future responses. In the introduction or my remarks in this book, I am very emphatic in terms of understanding that some governments are going to use people's fear in terms of limiting democracy, in terms of limiting human rights, in terms of limiting freedom. And let's say that very honestly, some governments are also tempted to use this pandemic to put women back into the kitchen. And that is not fair. IPU has been witnessing how women 131 years ago were not involved properly in politics. And now the IPU statistics that I believe are very, very much important. IPU is a world authority in terms of gender statistics. Let's be honest again, that is not enough. Having only 24.9% of women represented in the parliamentary seats is not enough. That is not fully inclusive. That is not fully democratic. And when we change this analysis to youth, it is kind of the same, but in a very terrible situation. While half of the total world's population is under 30 years old, for the parliamentary seat, it is only 2.2%. And this is a very sensitive issue for me. I got elected the first time to the federal parliament in my own country, in Mexico, when I was only 21 years old. I was only one of the 10% of women parliamentarians in the Mexican lower house. And I have witnessed since that year 2000 until now, 20 years later, how with the correct legislation, we can achieve gender parity. I saw that in my own country. We started in the first democratic transition in the year 2000 with only 11% of women parliamentarians. At the world level, it was in 1995 with the Beijing conference that there were only 11% of women parliamentarians in the world. But now, again, this is not enough. We need to understand that a true democratic model is going to include women and must include also youth. We cannot continue taking decisions for the youth without them. That is not right. That is not okay. And that's why both collaborations from Susan Kijika and also from the Young Parliamentarians Forum are so important and so meaningful for the IPU. These voices reflect two of the most important mandates of the IPU: gender equality and including youth. And I think these two collaborations should be also underlined, not only as the responsibility, like thinking that's a responsibility of the Forum of Women or the Young Parliamentarians. No, this is the voice of the IPU. These are part of the governing voices of the IPU. And we need to understand that all these beautiful speeches that we hear in the IPU in terms of inclusiveness are not enough if those ideas, if those objectives are not translated to national realities through the national parliaments.
Interesting, yes. And I was just looking through the milestones that we've mentioned during the anniversary book, looking back at 130 years. And I think it's worth mentioning in 1922, Antonie Plouffe, who was a German teacher and parliamentarian, and she was the very first woman to speak at an Inter-Parliamentary conference back in 1921. So gender equality has been a strong focus of the IPU since the very beginning, and especially since the 1920s. Perhaps we can, Madam President, we can also talk about the contributions from the members, because we reached almost 100 contributions from the IPU membership. So we've got 95 contributions from Afghanistan to Zimbabwe, and there's some interesting perspectives, some good practice being shared. Tell us more about the different contributions that we received, including Mexico, of course. And I would encourage, if others who are participating, if they would like to ask questions, please don't hesitate.
Thank you very much, Thomas. I think that we all understand the importance of our beloved organization, the Inter-Parliamentary Union, and that is very well reflected in the national contributions. I remember when we started reaching all the national parliaments, we received a lot of questions. How should I write it? How is the photography that I need to send? Which is the message that I should receive? And I think that at the end, we achieved a very good message. And that's how I think it goes into two directions. How the IPU has influenced the national parliaments in going for a world agenda, in terms of understanding our beautiful responsibility of translating those international commitments into national and local realities. But on the other side, IPU also received huge benefit from the national countries, from our membership, because you're bringing the expertise. Every time that I am asking the IPU Secretariat to prepare a speech, I am always asking for which are the best practices at the national level. And that is precisely, I think, the most important value of the IPU membership, that we can collect 179 different experiences and learn from that and exchange those lessons, that knowledge. IPU shows us that we do not need to learn from zero. We have friends, we have colleagues all around the globe to tell us how they are also implementing solutions for the people that they represent. And again, that's the spirit of these national contributions. And I think that is very, very beautifully reflected in the text and photos that we received. We understand that IPU is a global family of national parliaments. We understand that we can help each other. We understand that the plurality that is reflected in the national delegations is also one of the treasures of the IPU. So I think that these national chapters are going to be part of the IPU history, because they are not only writing their own experience with the IPU, but they are also reflecting what they are expecting from the IPU. And that's a very good point to start building on which is the IPU that we can expect after the pandemic. I was saying that Ramza Kabakci, from the president of the Turkish IPU group, was writing in the event chat, yes, we have a huge responsibility also, because IPU brings all these different voices, all this plurality in our meetings. And perhaps, as Ramza was mentioning, we are just starting to appreciate the value of that personal interaction. This book is, I think, a part of that spirit of understanding that we need each other, that we love to meet, to understand, to learn from each other. So yes, this book was born in a very challenging moment, but also brings a lot of answers and a lot of homework. Again, I do believe that we need to strengthen the IPU membership. Yes, we need to look for those parliaments that are not members of the IPU yet, but we need to understand that this is the most beautiful platform for parliamentary dialogue. And that exchanges and that experiences are written in this book.
Thank you so much. Yes, and there are some great pictures as well. We're very happy at the IPU to have now a whole bank of images of parliaments from around the world. And so it's great to see all the different styles and the different types of architecture. So it's from that point of view, it's a coffee table book, as we say. So un beau livre. So I think it's interesting. It makes interesting visual reading as well. Thank you. I don't think there are any. I don't know if anybody from the any of the delegates, any of the participants, would like to take the floor or ask any questions to Gabriela, to Madam President. And if there are no questions, I would suggest perhaps, Madam President, that we come to a conclusion for this session, unless there are other things that you would like to mention about the anniversary book, and perhaps we can end on and by asking you on International Day of Parliamentarism, what would you say to the 46,000 parliamentarians in the world? What would be your message to those 46,000 parliamentarians in the world on International Day of Parliamentarism?
I would say to the 46,000 parliamentarians of all the planet that I am sure that if we have a common goal, if we are clear on, for example, implementing the SDGs, on fighting climate change, on ending poverty and hunger, in ending this pandemic and start a new recovery, I am sure that we can be the generation that change this planet for good. And that's not only an opportunity, that's a responsibility. We cannot write a page in the world's history saying that we failed, that we preferred nationalism instead of multilateralism, that we prefer national ideas instead of common solutions. We cannot write in that page of history that we were the generation that didn't learn from the Me Too or the Black Lives Matter movements. We need to be that generation of parliamentarians that understand that we need to defend democracy, that we need to promote and defend human rights and freedoms, that we need to save the planet for destroying itself. We need to understand that we have the power of legislation, budget allocation, oversight, and I think the most important, we represent the people. That spirit of the UN Charter, we the people of the United Nations, is part of the parliamentarian spirit. We represent that plurality. We have a clear and beautiful mandate, and we need to take that responsibility as a collective, but also as a personal one, because we all have the power to change this planet in our hands, in our minds, and in our soul. And allow me to go back to the book, Thomas. I think that we have a very powerful message in the book, and that is that the answers that we are able to build as parliamentarians are going to be the new reality, the present and future of humanity. We cannot afford to lose. We cannot afford not learning the lesson. And I think that also as this book was created as IPU, as the global family of national parliaments, I would like also to ask the national parliaments to help us and make virtual national presentation or even regional presentations of this book. This is your house, this is your family, this is your organization. And I would love to be part of these national book presentations because this is the message that we need to understand. The only way that we are going to change this planet is making changes at regional, national, and local level. We are not going to change the planet with an IPU resolution or an IPU declaration. Yes, we do have beautiful and meaningful agreements and declarations and resolutions, but the way to change the planet is going back home and implement those resolutions and those decisions. For example, that goes for the IPU, but also for the United Nations. If we do not implement SDGs at the national and local level, nothing is going to change for the people that we represent. If we do not understand climate change as a big threat to humanity and to the planet, and go back home and change our legislation and change our budget and design new taxation systems, nothing is going to change. Yes, we do have challenging times, but I want to be an optimistic. I want to believe that the 46,000 parliamentarians of the world are going to be the generation that learn the lesson, that understand those very complicated times that we are going through, and we understand that this is not a curse. This is an opportunity. This is an opportunity to learn, to implement universal health coverage and have strong health systems with full inclusion. That if we have another pandemic or an epidemic or whatever sickness, it is not going to kill the numbers of people that is killing right now. Yes, it was even worse a century ago, but we have a responsibility with our parliaments, with the people that we represent, and with humanity. We need also to learn, and I think that one of the pending issues at the IPU, we need also to understand that our responsibility building more inclusive economies. At IPU, we haven't been able, and I want to recognize China in this regard. China just decided in their last sitting that economic growth was not going to be the focus. It is not about GDP. It is going to be about jobs and salaries. It is going to be about the people. And that's how we need to work, understanding that we work for the people that we represent. That plurality, that beautiful and generous people that are trusting on us. That's the mandate as parliamentarians for the parliaments and also for the international parliamentary community that is precisely the IPU family.
Many thanks indeed, Madam President, for those words and for bringing this meeting to a conclusion. I think this is probably the first time that there's been a virtual book launch on Interprify on this platform. So that in itself is a first. And we look forward to having perhaps a physical launch of the book in different parts of the world, as you suggested, when we can come out of confinement and when the pandemic is behind us, let's hope. So perhaps just to conclude, allow me to say many thanks to you all for joining us today from the four corners of the planet. I think we have every continent represented in different time zones. Many thanks to those who have joined from perhaps a slightly less civilized time zone than we have this afternoon in Geneva. We wish you all a wonderful International Day of Parliamentarism and anniversary of the IPU, and we hope to see you very soon, either virtually or in the flesh. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you very much to all, and thank you also to the Secretariat for organizing this meeting. And please, Thomas, let's post the videos of this meeting just as Mr. Kosachev has requested. Thank you, and thank you very much to all.